How many of you have had this experience? You've set a goal, it's something you're excited about, and you're full of energy and full of enthusiasm on day one. And maybe you do some stuff on day one. Maybe you do some stuff on day two. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't really get into action. And then weeks go by and months go by. And the next thing you know, it's the second quarter, almost June, and you've not really made meaningful progress towards your goals. I know this because I've been there. A couple of years ago, I set myself a really big goal. It was a very important goal. It was something that we needed for our family. It was something that I needed for myself and for my husband. And I just didn't move forward on it. I moved, not enough, and not at the right pace and not the right actions to move forward. And I had to sit down and have a hard conversation with myself. And what I realized and what I saw was that I had fallen into the very same trap that I coach my clients around. And that is the difference between setting a goal and making a commitment. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today is differentiating between setting goals and making commitments, because making a commitment is a very, very different energy to setting a goal. And so I actually don't work with goals, not in the classic way that most coaches work with goals. And so today I'm going to share with you the mindset shift that happened when I made a decision and what happens when you make that decision that's so deep. And then what flows after that that makes achieving the outcomes that you're here to achieve almost feel easy and effortless, like it's a natural progression of who you are. So welcome back to the channel. I'm Tania Adams, and I'm here to help you use brain science to break through those mindset blocks that are keeping you from that success that you deserve. This week's topic that we're focusing on is goals. So if you've got questions or you've got comments about goal setting, pop them in the comments below. I respond to every single comment that comes in. Now, here's what most people do with goals. The thing with goals is that the way that our mind views goals is it views goals as a target. And with any target, there's a hit or a miss. And the difficulty with that is that a couple of things are going to happen in the brain. One is we may conclude when we miss that we're a failure. A lot of times that can happen, though it leaves it kind of like it's a very black or white. It's hit or miss. And it may even feel out of reach, something that we're just not going to hit, like a basket, shooting at a basket hoop, for example, that's just too far to go. And so somewhere along the line, when we're aiming at targets, any number of things can happen inside us that stop us from moving towards from taking the shot at the target. Instead, what I like to coach my clients to do is to choose to make a commitment. There is a fundamental difference in the way the brain handles a focus on goals versus a commitment. And when we make a decision that is so clear and so aligned with where we're going to go, the brain reorganizes itself so that you start to behave and act in a way that moves you forward out of not a sense of having to do things, more of being driven from who you are. And it becomes a natural outcome of you moving towards a commitment. And a decision and a commitment has a particular resonance in the body, and you will know the moment that you've made a decision to have that outcome. You'll feel it. And in fact, years later, you'll be able to tell people, I remember the moment that I decided that. And in fact, that big goal that I spoke about, I often tell the story. I remember the moment that I just decided it was going to happen. And from that, what flowed was such an easy movement into doing the tasks. Now, was it easy to acquire that outcome? Absolutely not. Did it take hours of work? Definitely. Did it take me moving into spaces of discomfort to learn new skills, to do things I'd never done? 100%. Though it didn't feel like hard work. Yet, when I was working towards the goal, the idea of doing these things felt in my mind to be hard work. They felt like a chore. They felt like a to-do list that I didn't really want to do. There was a whole lot of internal resistance inside me. And that's not uncommon with goal setting. Yet when I had made the decision that this outcome was going to become a reality, there was now no more noise. All the resistance was gone. There was no more resistance inside me. There was no more noise inside me. All the distractions went away, and my focus became very, very narrow on exactly the outcomes, the activities that I would need to embark on in order to get to the outcome that I was now committed to. Absolutely 100% committed. And commitment doesn't have an either or. Unlike a goal, which is hit or miss, commitment only has the inevitability of its creation. And so that's why in the brain there is this super narrow focus for you to achieve the outcome that you are committed to, not the goal that you've set for yourself. So how do you work with a commitment then that's different from a goal? What I notice when people set goals is that they have various frameworks, and you can read many, many books about different frameworks of setting goals. Yet it's not necessary to have a framework when you've made a commitment. What is necessary is to ask, what is the next best step for me to move forward towards the creation of this outcome? And because of the way that the brain is now primed for the outcome, a whole lot of things are happening inside the brain. Number one, it starts to narrow down the inputs that come into the brain. At any given time, our brain is receiving millions of inputs, both internally from our bodily signals, externally from the environment, in the form of sounds, visuals, movement on our skin. So we're aware of the air, we're aware of the temperature. We're aware also of what other people are doing, other people are saying, and sometimes these things are happening in the background of our mind. What we're not aware of is that when we have made a commitment as distinct from a goal, there's a piece of our brain that starts to become like a filter. I refer to it as like a bodyguard at a nightclub. And it's as though you've given this bodyguard a brief for who can come in, what is the dress code. And the minute that you commit to an outcome as becoming a reality, you are then briefing the doorman, the bodyguard at the door, to allow only certain information in and to disregard other information. So we're sending away the people with jeans and tackies, and we are allowing in the people that are dressed appropriately. And the brain has to filter out extraneous information. Otherwise, it's going to run itself ragged and you'll run out of energy. And so the most powerful way to prime the brain for what can come in is to make that decision and that commitment. And then to ask it a question all the time. What is the next best step that I must take for the creation of that outcome? And our brains are really powerful at finding answers. They like to go and find an answer. And the quality of the answers you get is always driven by the quality of the questions that you ask. So this idea of setting a goal and then having a to-do list or really leaves the brain cold, in fact, from a chemical perspective. There's no curiosity, there's no new learning, there's no fun stuff for the brain to do. And the brain learns best when it's allowed to be curious, when it's allowed to learn. And so making that decision to prime your brain for only allowing information in is part of what happens with that sense that the noise has gone down and distractions have gone away and you can focus. And the second thing that's really powerful when you've made a commitment is that you then open up a doorway to visualize the outcome. When it's a goal, you can think about what that might look like, though a commitment starts to become embedded in your brain itself. And when you use visualization techniques and infuse them with emotion and engage all of your senses when you're visualizing this, the brain doesn't know, it doesn't have the ability to distinguish between whether this thing is actually happening right now or whether we're waiting for it. And the mechanism behind that is very simple. The more that you rehearse the next best step towards your outcome, the more that you rehearse what it looks like on your way to this outcome, and also what it feels like when you're there, the more that the neural networks are programmed and actually start to grow themselves in the same way as if you had practiced that. And there's now a lot of studies that show that you can mentally grow neural networks around different types of things, playing the piano, skills that you don't yet have, simply by visualizing yourself doing them. So here's the thing with visualization. A lot of people visualize the end outcome, and they sit and hum and imagine and have all great feelings about the completion, though they don't visualize the journey. And this is a nuance that's very important. When you're only visualizing the outcome, the brain is going to give you some dopamine and it's going to feel really good. It's going to feel like, oh, I'm there, I've achieved it. And the danger zone in there is that what it can inadvertently do is prevent you from acting. So, what's more powerful is that you visualize the process of you getting to that outcome. Visualize the activity. So, if you've got a body goal, visualize yourself going to gym, lifting weights, exercising, making healthy meals. If you've got a business goal, visualize yourself presenting your business, speaking to clients, closing deals. Visualize and see and feel what that feels like. And then, of course, minimize your distractions. Whenever you're working towards an outcome that's very, very important to you, what's critical is that you help your own brain help itself. Yes, it's going to shut down things that are extraneous, though there are certain things that you can help it along with. So, for example, my phone has been on silent for nearly 20 years. I have no notifications on for anything on my phone other than banking that obviously alerts me to banking transactions. Outside of that, I have no notifications because the brain thrives when it's allowed to go into a space of deep work. And the more that you can keep distractions away from the brain, you're visualizing yourself doing the outcome, then you're moving into the space and you've got this deep embedded decision and commitment that this thing is going to become a reality. That's how it becomes a reality. And what you'll find is that the speed with which you achieve your outcome is far greater than you could have imagined. It almost feels like magic. And it's not. It is neuroscience and it's part of how we're made and designed. The trick is that we must learn how to harness that and to use it to get to where we want to be. There's also, of course, other ways that you can help yourself, and the human body needs fuel and energy. So there's a couple of other things that I do when I'm working towards a really big outcome. I take really good high quality supplements. I manage my stress. I keep my central nervous system well regulated. I take nootropics, for example, to help my brain with its neuroplasticity and to keep the stress levels down. One of my favorites actually is ashwagandha. I take a really high quality ashwagandha. And these are all things that you can use to help your brain. Staying hydrated is another one. Keeping your nutrition high in protein. The brain needs those proteins in order to work better. And then, of course, exercise. Exercising daily is a surefire way to help you to achieve what you want, because one of the things that exercising does is it induces something called brain-derived neurotropic factor, which, if you think about it, it's a little bit like fertilizer for the brain. So it's all well and good to be doing work. Though the old expression, all work and no play makes Jill a dull girl or Jack a dull boy, was not wrong. We need to rest, we need to recuperate, we need to exercise, we need to eat well, hydrate, and we need to have fun and play. So here's the last thing that I will say about goals. When you're working towards a really big outcome and you've made that commitment, one of the things that derails a lot of high performance people is that they measure themselves by how far away they are from that commitment. The more effective way to do it is to measure how far you've moved from your starting position. Why? Because the brain will respond to the celebratory chemicals when you say, hey, I've moved out of the starting blocks. Hey, I've moved another few meters down the road. And every time you fuel the brain with a little bit of celebration, it then gives it the motivation and drive to continue with the next step. In the absence of that, if you go on a long run for a long outcome, what can happen is that it just starts to feel exhausting, because the truth is you're not giving the brain the neurochemicals it needs to keep the motivation levels high. So we have the ability to help our brains, and this is what I love to teach people, is to help your brain help you. It really does want to help you. And the more that you can learn about how your brain is working, my wish is that you will then be able to start to manage your brain in a way that helps you feel effortless and to achieve that freedom-based sense of life and living, whether it's in your job or whether it's in your business. So if you like the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, do me a favor and give it a thumbs up, and then subscribe and hit the little bell and keep your notifications on so that you know whenever there's a new piece released. I normally release a video every week, so you'll have a new video, and sometimes there's extra special things in between. Also, keep an eye out for my free webinars that happen on a Thursday. The details for that will be in the description down below. I hope to see you soon again and have a fantastic rest of your day.